Well, it's a pleasure to have our friend Steve Hilton on the program. I don't think have I ever had Steve. Have you ever been on this show?
Not on this show, Mark. It's a great joy. We were neighbors
Yes.
on Fox News on Sunday nights, and it's wonderful to be with you.
Well, I don't have a ton of guests, to be honest with you, so that's one of the reasons. But you're really sharp, very cogent, very thorough, and your home is in California. And you said, you know what? I got to write some about this, and I got to write the most thorough, comprehensive book on what's happened to California and why. And you have, and you break it down into little pieces, which are absolutely crucial. So explain, it's one thing to go out and talk about it. You decided to write a book about it. So why did you do that, and how did you go about it?
Well, the first thing, Mark, is I wanted to write this book as a warning to the rest of the country, to everyone who doesn't live in California, that this is what you get. You look at California today, this is what you get when Democrats get everything they want, because they've had it all their own way. They've been in complete control at the state level for decades. They've run the cities. They've run the big counties. This is it. When Democrats tell you what they stand for, just look at California. They've run this far-left experiment, and we've got the results now. It is a total failure on every front. I mean, the numbers are just absolutely horrific. Literally the worst out of every state on pretty much every measure that matters. We have the highest rate of poverty, the highest taxes, the highest cost for everything that matters, housing, gas, electricity, water. According to Chief Executive Magazine surveys of business leaders, the worst business climate in America. That's 10 years in a row. I mean, I could go on. It is just horrific. The schools are a disaster. Obviously, we have the highest homelessness. So the real question is, how did this happen? And what can we do to stop it happening anywhere else? And so what I've done in Califailure, which is the name of the book, because this has been just a total failure, is go through the components of this ideological sickness that's infected the Democrats in California that they've played out. And I look at the different pathologies that comprise this leftism. You've got elitism, cronyism, where they're in bed with the government unions that control everything, climatism, where the way the climate policy just drives everything. And there are 9 of these, and I go through them one by one to show how they've combined to create the worst-run state in America.
Mm-hmm. What is the ideology that undergirds all this?
I think that the foundational one is narcissism. This belief that they're actually saving the planet, doing all these great things in theory, but in practice, nothing works. Mm-hmm. And the people who are most hurt by it are the exact same people they claim to speak for. Working class people, Latinos, particularly in California, they're the largest group, black people. They're the people. Look at the schools. The school results are a total disaster, and the families and the students that have the worst outcomes, the exact people that the Democrats claim to speak for. They tell themselves they're being compassionate, that they're solving the climate crisis, they're doing all these great things, they're so virtuous. Actually, it's horrendous. They're hurting people. It's cruel. It's not compassionate. But they keep telling themselves. Look at Gavin Newsom, the way he talks, the way he keeps talking about, we're leading this and we're leading that, we're dominating this and so on. It's delusional. But it's all because they don't care about the people they're supposed to be governing. They care about themselves and their own self-image as these great, virtuous leaders. But they're the opposite.
They are the opposite. Now, this guy Newsom, to me, is a very strange guy. He's a very strange guy. He really can't decide what he is, can he? He truly is a chameleon. He'll move hard left. Other times he'll put a foot down here and there to try and present himself as a man. He's just power hungry, isn't he?
100%. That's what it is. He's a classic machine politician, and he'll say whatever is politically expedient, and he understands that they were defeated in November because they went too far left, and so now he's trying to pretend that he's not with that. But of course, he's not just some random guy who's running for office. He's in office now. He could be doing the things that he talks about. So when he tells Charlie Kirk, oh, isn't it unfair, deeply unfair, he said, that you have biological men competing in girls' sports. Well, that's the law in California. What is he doing to change it? You've got bills from Republican legislators in the state assembly literally today. And Newsom's not commenting. He's not getting behind it. He's not doing anything because for him it's all positioning, saying whatever's politically helpful. In that respect, he's just like Kamala Harris and actually Biden. They're all the same. They're machine politicians. They have no convictions. It's pure calculation, and that's why you can't trust them.
Mm-hmm. You think he's going anywhere?
Newsom, yes, I think he's definitely in the hunt for 2028. That's why he's doing all this. Mm-hmm. And, I've spoken to a number of people who tell me, yeah, I'm suspicious of him or whatever. But if you actually listen to the podcast, he is kind of charming and he does have something and you can believe it. So he's got charisma. There's no question about that. Even Charlie Kirk said, after that conversation with him, Charlie said, look, don't underestimate this guy. He's got something. Now, what he's also got is a record, and that's what I want everyone to focus on. Califailure. That's my book. That's his record. By the way, he's having all these other conservatives on his podcast. I was, we went to him and said, could I go on and debate with him?
Oh, I bet he fears you.
Well, of course, I said, no, they're not going to have me on because I know the facts about how disastrous his, tenure has been and the other Democrats who've been in control. But everyone needs to know it's much worse than you think.
We're here with our friend Steve Hilton. He's got a great new book. You can get it at Amazon.com right now, or we link to it on my social sites. Califailure, and he's reviewing the ruin of America's worst-run state, which used to be America's best-run state. I can tell you, Steve Hilton, that when I was a kid growing up in Pennsylvania, everybody kept talking about California. They wanted to go to California. The taxes were low, the regulations were low, the weather was fantastic, geography's unbelievable. You had a string of tremendous governors, you had Reagan, you had Duke Majan, you had Wilson, and so forth. And now you've got crap, a complete mess. Isn't it true also, so the whole country knows, you have super-duper majorities in the House and the Senate, the Assembly and the Senate in California, and they changed the voting system to rig it to ensure it continues to happen.
100%. This is what's outrageous, is that you've got these supermajorities, which mean that they can pass anything without any input from Republicans. There's no reason for them to compromise. It's all driven by the far left. But it's rigged, as you say, because it's not legitimate. If you take Republican share of the vote in California in statewide elections, it's actually higher than people think, even in a bad year with a not particularly well-known candidate with not much money. For example, last time, in the last governor's race, you had Newsom running for re-election, all the money he wanted, really well-known. The Republican candidate, a good guy, Brian Darley from the state Senate, but really no name recognition, barely had a campaign because he didn't have any money. But he got 41%. And so let's just call it 40%, right? That's the baseline. Pretty much that's the average of the Republican vote share for the last 20 years. In the state legislature, you don't have Republicans with 40% representation. It's not 35, it's not 30, not 25, it's 20%. It's half what it should be because they've rigged the districts, they hijacked the districting process. They introduced this ballot initiative, which they sold as being independent redistricting, and then they hijacked it. They put government workers on the case, drawing up the maps, and now you have this total underrepresentation of Republican vote by a massive margin. And the same, by the way, applies to the congressional seats in California. So if you had fair representation of Republicans, not only would you have an end to the supermajority in California, you'd actually probably have another 10 House seats for Republicans. So it's a really big thing to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. What do you see in the future of California? By the way, the book is Califailure. What do you see? I mean, with the open borders there, the depopulation of really among the most productive people there, businesses there, the importation of poverty, of homeless, of illegal aliens. I mean, is it over? Is there one last breath? What do you think?
Yeah, it can't be. We've got to fight for it. There's a line in the book that I take very seriously. I really feel this we've lived in California now since we moved here from England, and I've been there since 2012. It's my home. I'm raising my family there. I've started businesses there. It's my life. And we can't let it just fail. And there's a line in the book which I really, really just captures it for me, which is California means to America what America means to the world. It should be a symbol of the best of America. And so I really don't want to let it fail. And so I think there is one last breath, there's one last fight, because people are so sick of it now. Actually, in 2024, the election results were pretty good. President Trump at the top of the ticket. Of course, the Trump campaign didn't really play in California because there's no prospect of getting the Electoral College votes. Even despite that, not really bothering with California, he got the best result of any Republican for generations. You had 10 counties flip from Democrat to Republican, and some of the big ones, including Fresno in the Central Valley. It's the fifth biggest city in California. You saw massive victory for the Proposition 36, which made crime illegal again after the disastrous Kamala Harris Prop 47 that legalized theft up to $950. You saw defeats for George Gascon in LA, and so on. So there were signs. And then in January, of course, you have the absolute catastrophe of the wildfires, which woke people up to the sheer scale of their total incompetence. And it's not just the incompetence, the ideological extremism, because that's what led to things like not clearing the brush. That was their climate zealotry that pushed all of that. And so people are waking up to that. And LA County really matters because it's 23% of the total vote in California. It's a huge county. And the fact that so many people in Los Angeles saw for themselves the absolute catastrophe of this Democrat one-party rule, I think there really is hope. 2026 is the next election where we can really fight back. And I don't know, I've got a feeling we can pull off a real revolution in California.
Mm-hmm. And do you plan to be part of that?
Well, I'm strongly considering it. Absolutely, yes. I'm strongly considering running because I love California. I hate to see what's happening. I've written this book. I've got a plan. Part 2 of the book is actually called Califuture, and it's a policy plan.
I meant to mention that.
Things.
Yeah, it's not all negative.
No. And the thing is that it's not even that complicated. It's just like President Trump says. It's common sense policies. And the thing that's so interesting to me is that looking at the way Republicans in California have handled things the last, recent history, that I think there's been this feeling that the only way you win in California as a Republican is to be some kind of watered down version of a Democrat. And as he has in so many other areas, Trump just proved all of that wrong. People are desperate for these common sense, practical things. I'll give you an example. So there's this folklore that one of the reasons that the Republican Party stopped winning in California was Proposition 187 back when Pete Wilson was governor, which was all about removing welfare benefits from illegal immigrants. And this was characterized as racist, all the usual stuff, right? And people say, well, that's it for Republicans in California. They'll never win the Latino vote. It's all over. It's just not true. Mm-hmm. If you talk to, as I do the whole time, it's the immigrant communities, hardworking Latino families in California, they are the most furious about things like the outrage last year. You remember this bill they tried to introduce, they introduced it in the legislature, which would take taxpayer money and give it to illegal immigrants for free down payments so they could buy a house, even as you have most working people in California couldn't even dream of buying a house because house prices are so high, thanks to their over-regulation and all the rest of it. And they're giving money to illegal immigrants to buy a house. There was outrage among Latino communities. So it's just not true to say that you can't win on a clear, common-sense conservative platform. I think that's the way to do it. You've got to get people excited about voting for something. And I think that is the trick in California.
The book is Califailure, but there is a section on what California can do in order to breathe new life into the state. One of the things he can do is blow out this Newsom and the Democrat leadership in the Assembly and the Senate. But, Steve Hilton, somehow you're going to have to figure out how to change the election system back or somehow, because they really have distorted it, haven't they?
Yes, and actually, there's a very important point, which is there's right now signatures are being gathered for a ballot initiative for voter ID for 2026, which is a really big part of the story as well, because they've introduced here insane, the universal mail-in balloting. They send ballots out to everybody. Ballot harvesting is legal, where union activists can collect thousands of ballots and help people fill them in. I mean, the whole thing is a joke. And so you're right, that has to be part of the story as well.
All right, my friend, good luck. I know you're doing your book tour. Folks, this is a great book. You're going to love it. You might say, well, I'm not from California. That's the point. He's trying to warn people all over the country this can happen to you in your state. He's also explaining that how they need to fight back in California. Califailure, reviewing the ruin of the worst run state, California. And you can go to Amazon.com. I want to encourage you to do that. How long did it take you to write the book?
Well, I've been researching it for the last 2 years. I've been on the road a lot in California, but, I write pretty quickly in the end, so it came together in a few months. But the work, there's a couple of years' work gone into it.
All right, brother. You take care of yourself, and congratulations. Excellent job.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mark. Great to be with you.
You too. That's Steve Hilton. The book is Califailure. I want to recommend it to you. I know you're going to like it.